Hi, Lauren. How are you? You're muted. Am I muted? You're muted.
I'm muted. Hi, I'm doing good. How's it going?
Good, good. Did you go anywhere or do anything for the break?
No, my wedding anniversary is actually this next week, so my husband and I are going away for the weekend.
Where are you going?
We're going to Carmel. It'll be fun.
Oh yeah, I haven't been to Carmel in like forever.
Yeah, I haven't gone as an adult. I think I went with my parents as a really little kid, but
Yeah.
it'll be fun. I'm excited to go look around. Just take
Yeah.
it easy for a weekend.
Right. No, that's fun. That's fun. I actually just went to Florida.
Oh.
My mom, it was my mom's birthday, and so I was like, I guess I'll go. I was kind of freaking out, but I did get one vaccination. Uh,
Oh,
so I have gotten one, and I knew that it would protect me somewhat, and so it made me mentally feel so much better.
good.
Um, but it was crowded. The airports and the airplanes were crowded. So that was
I think more and more people are getting vaccinated, so once
I
everybody's and
double
even people that aren't.
I double masked, so I was like, I'm ready. I'm ready for it.
Good.
Hold on, I'm gonna close my door because my son's gonna start yelling. He plays video games and it's really loud. Hey, August, I'm on. Okay. Okay. Hey, Gabby.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
Good,
I'm just getting back in the swing of things.
good. I heard
I,
you got vaccinated. Did you get both shots?
I will get my second shot on April 13th.
Okay, yeah, I still have to get my second shot. The first one actually hurt, so I'm not looking
Oh,
forward to the second.
like it hurt. Like I didn't even feel it. It was weird.
Well, it hurt like a couple of hours after, like I could
Oh,
barely lift my arm. Yeah.
yes, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, like I would like right when I was going to bed, I was like, well, this is painful. Like
Yeah,
it's hurting a little bit. And I've heard that the second shot like can even make you feel like kind of
I
ill.
yeah, that's what I heard. But I think like 72 hours or something like that, you could get really sick. But yeah.
Oh, four people are in my
fully
waiting.
vaccinated.
We got Julie, we have Sandy, we have Madison. Okay.
Oh, more people. Yeah, my husband's fully vaccinated. This guy is fully vaccinated, and he got pretty sick the second shot for like one day, just like terribly sick, but then was totally fine in like 12 hours.
Oh, yeah. But was he kind of freaking out?
A little bit. I mean, he's a big, strong guy. He was fine, but it was, like chills and the fever, and like he felt like he had COVID for like 6 hours or something, and then was totally fine,
Okay,
like
well, I guess
back on
if
his
that
feet.
happens to me, it's good to know that can happen. Um, so hi, new folks joining. So we have Sandy, Madison, Krista, Julie. I just was telling the two that were that first arrived in the Zoom. Oh, and Krista, hi. That I went to Florida, and I actually went to this little island in Florida called Anna Maria Island, and it's kind of like old Florida. It's very charming, and I have spent quite a bit of time in Florida because my uncle lived there, and we would go there sometimes. But super like cute little like Victorian houses, and it was just kind of fun because I knew we were going to talk about Victorian tonight, and it was just like kind of fun to see all these little Victorian, and also some like giant mansions that are being built. That one was a cute little maybe I'll pull it up. One was a cute Victorian where's my glasses? Did anybody else go anywhere for spring break? I just thought it was funny that I was like going to Florida, like the typical spring break place. Right, here it is. It's a little yellow beach house. Oops. Let's see if it goes. Oh, there it is. Okay. Whoops, it's like a little video. Hold on. Does anybody else hate the way iOS deals with photos?
Wait, what?
I hate the way iOS deals with photos. Like
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's very weird the way
Yeah.
they handle photos. Okay, I'm gonna share. Well, maybe I'm not gonna share with you. I'm gonna try to share. It's like I pull up a photo, I text it to myself, and guess what's right next to it? Like a picture of my mom in a bikini, which I'm like, like I can't share that on the Zoom. I mean, seriously. Okay, here it is. I'm gonna share this. Okay, can you guys see this little yellow house? Isn't it cute? So this is like a little beach house, giant beach house. So the beach is over here on the left. So it's like this little alleyway, but look at the little fence. And I actually forgot what this is called, but this is actually a really like common motif of it's like the cross or something like that. And this is kind of like an East Lake, kind of a riff off an East Lake design. This is all like stick work. They called it stick work. All these like wood little designs, little brackets here. So this is obviously you've seen it and you know it, Victorian architecture. But what's really cool about it is that it's actually like a toned down version of Gothic architecture. And I don't know if people really know that, but it's sort of like a friendly Gothic, right? Whereas like it's a more like accessible kind of Gothic, but really, really cute house. Anyway.
Are those little pineapples carved into the fence?
I know, isn't that cute?
That's adorable.
Yeah, yeah. And what do pineapples mean? Like welcome, you give them to people as like a housewarming gift or something like
It's like
that?
a vitality symbol.
Vitality?
Hospitality.
Hospitality, okay.
Yeah. I used to work at Airbnb and we had like like an in-house magazine that was like a pineapple theme for hospitality.
That's cute. Yeah.
Yeah.
So definitely like that whole like vibe of that friendly Victorian is definitely a little bit more welcoming in general than the sort of the Middle Ages version of it. Anyway, so let's go right to our, let me find my, hold on. Oh, first, let's talk about the final project. I had somebody ask me a question, which I probably need to answer them just directly via email, but I figured if they had the question, that you would have the question. Can you guys see my Google Slides? Okay.
Yes.
But first, I'm going to show you this final paper presentation. So this is due April 20th. Do you guys know our basically the last day of class? I think you all know it. I just probably had forgotten. Is like we're done April 27th. Isn't that crazy? So the final project presentations, and I've turned on this week and next week. I can basically turn on all the weeks since it's all we have left is a final and final project. So I'm going to do that right now. Because that's all, then you can see it all. You can see. We'll review final project presentations. Okay. And then does everybody know how to sign up for a subject or project? There's this sign up sheet that is somewhere here. Where did that go? Final project sign up. Okay. So if you go to modules, week 10, March 16th, final project sign up is here. I'll probably send out an announcement so that those of you who haven't signed up. So it looks like we've got quite a few people that have signed up. Oh, Krista, Le Corbu. Okay, awesome. Madison still deciding. Sherry still deciding. Okay. Ooh, Crystal is doing Marie Antoinette. Okay. Oh, Madison, you're doing Florence Knoll.
Yeah, I think I'll plan on doing her.
You're gonna do her. Okay. I love Florence Knoll.
It'd be fun to do a female.
Yep. Yeah, it's good. And then, oh, Morgan must be doing Memphis School. Okay. Jeff's doing Elsie DeWolf. Yay. Gabby, you're doing furniture techniques.
Yeah, there's a chance I might change it. I'm just gonna investigate and see how tricky it is, but yeah, for now.
Book used for chairs from Pat. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, you could always like narrow it down and just do like from here to here. You're gonna love tonight when we talk about Henry. When we talk about Henry Belter. Have you learned about Henry Belter yet?
I have not. No.
Oh my goodness. Eden is doing Wells. Kevin. Oh, cool. Okay. Fun. I really like this. I like it when people, I know that not everybody can come to the live classes, but it's really fun to like, everybody can have like a turn at sharing their screen and just kind of going through, and then you just learn something really quickly. One of the things I'm looking at, Tonnet would be a cool person. Who else? Art Nouveau, Vitruvius. Anybody, any woman in the Bauhaus is really interesting because they're not really talked about very often. Annie Albers is probably the one that's talked about the most. Okay. Okay. Let's do this. So what we're talking about, we're going to talk a little bit about early American and kind of like pushing ourselves into Victorian area. And one of the really interesting things, I think Victorian area is totally fascinating because this is really where people start to become to have more money. They become just more aware of things creating status for them, which I think is completely fascinating because it starts people really wanting to consume and to purchase things and to have stuff. Because having more stuff means you have more status. And now look at us now. We have a real problem. with all of our crap. And now we're trying to figure out how to stop having so much stuff, but we still want stuff, but we don't want to have too much stuff. So it's like there's a whole industry based on, well, there's several industries based on the getting rid of, the uncluttering, the organizing, and then all the junk you got to buy. Like, to me, one of the things I am deathly afraid of becoming a hoarder. I'm not going to, but I'm deathly afraid of it. I can't even watch that show. And because I just find it so sad. And then whenever I want to organize something and I find myself wanting to buy stuff to organize, I'm just like, I go to the Container Store and I'm like, I love it. I hate it. I don't want to buy it because it's like another, and I have told myself that I can no longer buy those things that are plastic. Like, they have to be like something that's like, either it's like a textile or it's like a woven thing. And it definitely cannot be a plastic woven thing. It just really bothers me. Anyway, Victorian era fascinates me. The idea of having stuff and being able to display all your stuff. And then just also all the technology that was available, and just like all the wealth that was just being created. But also all the stress that must have been being created in that same thing. It must have just been so crazy. And the working conditions, it just became like horrific. There's just, terrible, like child labor, like no regard for people's lives or their age or, what they were going through. So some just super interesting things that were going on. But anyway, let's go back to early America. And we're going to look at some federal style, right? So really what happens is, as you come to America, the federal style is what we sort of were talking about with neoclassical. But here in America, they didn't really call it neoclassical, they call it federal style. So when you go to Virginia or you go to DC, I don't know if you've ever been there, but you're just inundated with that style. And a lot of federal buildings are this way, right, that we see. But when you go there, you really just see it. And they do mix that whole neoclassical. They do really like that facade of those, like the white marble or the white stone facades. And it is very beautiful with all the reflecting pools and stuff like that. So most people know who Thomas Jefferson is. He's the third president, the writer of the Declaration of Independence. He's very cultured. He was very, 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 very smart. He's like pretty much a professional architect. Was able to draw his own, this is Monticello, his estate. He was able to draw his own plans, be his own architect. And so, he's fancied himself pretty much a Renaissance man. He fought for freedom, but at the same time also was a slave owner, profited from slaves his entire life. He had children that were slaves. And so there's a lot of issues with him. So this is another facade. And you'll notice when you look at this, we're looking at what is kind of pulled from that Greek portico right out front, with the pediment and the frieze and the looks like Ionic columns, right? And then here you have like a little nod to like the neoclassical, kind of a fan shape. And then over here you've got like a Romanesque dome, right? And then you've got what looks to be fairly symmetrical. So you've got another portico over here, and then over here it looks like you've probably got like a really beautiful like sun porch or something like that. I've been there. It's very nice. It's actually not that big. I mean, actually the photo doesn't look that big, but it's really a cool space. And then here's an interior, like the dining room with this very bright yellow. I can't remember what this is called. It's a color that was like a very, obviously very vivid gold yellow that at the time during Victoria's reign had just been invented, the shade of yellow. And so this was, like all the rage. So everybody wanted this shade of yellow, chromium, something like that, I think. It might be in the video. I have a video for Brighton Pavilion. It might be in that video. But anyway, notice these beautiful Hepplewhite chairs, this shield design I talked about. I really love these chairs. I think they're really like very delicate and pretty. And then you notice these, neoclassical sort of touches with this pediment on the window. And then I think there's a little bit of a molding up here. And then all you really see is just the chair. So really like quite a bit simpler in terms of interiors. And then we're familiar with this. This is the White House. And so the front of it is that whole Greek portico with the pediment and definitely Ionic columns. And then all the windows have like a little alternating style of like swag and pediment looking. With the dental molding up here and the balustrade. And then the back has that rounded portico on the south lawn. So these are the north and south facing elevations. Was finished in 1800, and James Hoban, an Irish architect, which is really interesting. And it was built by artisans who were free and slaves, and also immigrants built the White House. So now we'll take you out of America. We'll take you back to England. So once Victoria became queen, she was really, really very popular. And her reign, 1837 to 1901. So at that time, Gothic architecture became very, very popular. So much so that they started building new things in the Gothic style. And they called it the Gothic Revival or Neo-Gothic. So either one works. And then just so if you start to get confused about Victorian, what is Victorian? The naming conventions usually just follow the names of the monarch, and when you're going to the United States, that's why it's called federalism. So that can sometimes get confusing, but we're talking all about, at this point, Victorian. So one of the, I think, really interesting things is the Royal Pavilion, which now is not a palace anymore. It was owned by the monarchy, but then it was sold. Victoria sold it. But it was built in the like the Indian style. It basically looks like a mosque, and it's quite large. But what's interesting about it is the insides are decorated in the Chinese style. So really, I believe it's King George. The video talks about it. But anyway, he had never been to any of these places, but he just loved the styles. And so he just kind of wanted to mix and match. So like a ton of cultural, appropriations that he wanted to do. But, it's England. And so they felt like they had that right to do that. So, but it's a really interesting sort of like snapshot of like all of these different mishmash. And so what's really interesting about Brighton is sort of like a metaphor for Victorian, which is basically eclecticism. And you'll hear that a lot about Victorian. It's sort of like, I'm going to pick Gothic. I'm going to pick a little bit of Egypt. I'm going to pick a little bit of, Chinese and and some Indian over here, and I'm just going to put it all together, and this is my style. So it became okay, you know, to just mix all your styles. And you know what? I want to show you this video. Oh wait, I don't want to use that. Can you guys see that?
The Royal Pavilion, one of the most fantastic buildings in Europe. Extravagant and eccentric, it dramatically reflects the personality of its creator, King George IV. In 1786, George, then Prince of Wales, took up residence in a modest lodging house in Brighton. Over the next 35 years, during which he became Prince Regent and then King, George commissioned the development of the building into a spectacular Indian-style palace. Although it appears to be Indian on the outside, Chinese on the inside, it is actually only a Western interpretation of the East. George never visited either, but loved the exotic, fantastical vision of both. Britain was a very powerful nation at this time, and George may have seen himself as Emperor of the world. During George's visits to the Royal Pavilion, he would play host to many guests who would stay for several days. They would enjoy lavish hospitality, and the building would come alive with banquets, balls, and concerts. Progressive ill health and the demands of the monarchy meant that George's visits became more infrequent. His last visit was in 1827, 3 years before he died. His brother, William IV, succeeded him as king and reigned until 1837. His niece, Victoria, then became queen. Queen Victoria used the pavilion as a royal residence until 1845, when she decided to sell it. She felt she was constantly being stared at by the public, and it was too public a place for her family. 143 wagons of the interior furnishings and decorations were removed and taken to London for the royal collection. In 1849, a bill was brought before Parliament, which would have allowed the demolition of the pavilion and the selling of the site for redevelopment. This measure was opposed by a public petition and a determined campaign led by the town clerk of Brighton, Lewis Slight. The pavilion was eventually bought by the town for £53,000. It remains the only British royal palace not owned by the state or the crown. Within a year of purchase, the pavilion opened to the public. Attempts were made to redecorate the main rooms in the original style, and Queen Victoria returned many items, such as chandeliers, paintings, and fixings. Over the next 100 years, the pavilion was used for a huge range of events, from prestigious assemblies and balls, a tea room, to bazaars, baby contests, flower shows, and even a flea circus. Writers such as Oscar Wilde and William Thackeray gave lectures. In 1861, Brighton Museum opened in the pavilion, and in 1866, the town's first library was established here. One of its most extraordinary uses was as a hospital for Indian soldiers during the First World War. At a time when Britain desperately needed to retain the loyalty of India, the Pavilion Hospital became a valuable propaganda tool. Successive monarchs have since returned many of the original fittings and furniture, and those that were lost were accurately recreated from historic sources. However, in 1975, an arson attack on the building left the music room badly damaged, and it took some 15 years to restore. But disaster struck again in the hurricane of 1987, when a newly restored minaret dislodged and crashed through the ceiling of the music room, burying itself into the floor. Conservation of the pavilion is ongoing, and you'll often see conservators working on different aspects of the building. In the 1980s and 90s, the surrounding gardens were also reinstated as far as possible to their original layout and planting. John Nash's original plans for the gardens were an integral part of his overall vision for the estate. They show a new ornamental style of gardening with shrubberies, flower beds, and winding paths, in contrast to the 18th century landscape garden, with its emphasis on visual effects rather than flowers. Now let me take you on an alternative tour of the Royal Pavilion, where we'll explore hidden spaces of the palace through vulnerable and fragile areas that are rarely seen and difficult to access. There are a myriad of walkways, tiny hatches, and narrow staircases. We'll start in the cellars, climb up to the domes and rooftops, and you'll see a very different side to the richly extravagant rooms you have seen so far. There are lots of myths about the existence of tunnels under the pavilion gardens. There is actually only one tunnel, which leads not to Mrs. Fitzherbert's house in the Steine, as is commonly thought, but to the Prince Regent's stables, which is now the Dome. It is 60 metres long and was constructed in 1821 at a cost of £1,783. George had it built at a time when he was very unpopular with the public and was embarrassed to be seen due to his increasing weight. It allowed him to cross his entire estate unseen. The tunnel was also used by servants and for deliveries. It offered hidden access into the pavilion. Following the stairs up through the ground floor and the first floor, you come to a hidden staircase, which leads up to a set of rooms known as the Saloon Bottle. There are 55 stairs to climb to reach the pavilion's central dome. It was built between 1817 and 1820. In the summer of 1818, the Prince Regent travelled from London to see the erection of the cast iron structure for the bottle. It was originally intended to be a billiards room, but George seems to have had a change of heart. A suite of 4 rooms was fitted up instead. The grained doors and the remaining wallpaper date from about 1830. In William IV's reign, from 1830 to 1837, the rooms were occupied by the King's nephew, Prince George of Cumberland. In Queen Victoria's time, the rooms were valets' apartments. If you look closely, you can see that many of the walls are covered with graffiti and signatures. Up until the Second World War in 1939, this area was accessible to everyone, and visitors could wander through the almost completely unfurnished pavilion as they wished. Since the 1970s, when much of the building was restored, it was felt appropriate to leave this area untouched. It illustrates what the pavilion must have looked like when the town council bought it in 1850. The oval windows offer a fantastic view of Brighton, although it has changed significantly since George's day. The unfinished oval dome ceiling that was originally intended for this area can be seen above the existing ceiling. Evidently, the area was downgraded in the course of construction, possibly due to George's lack of funds. The Saloon Bottle is the highest part of the pavilion. Looking down from it, you can see the roof of the pavilion. There is a maze of hidden spaces up here, narrow walkways and tiny doors, which lead into the pavilion domes. Here you can see John Nash's elaborate cast iron framework, which he built over the existing Marine Pavilion building to support the dome above the saloon. Because Nash could not support the additional story and new onion-shaped roof on the existing external walls, he devised a cage of iron columns encircling the walls. It was a daring technical stroke, and Nash experimented widely with new materials on an unprecedented scale. It was one of the first domestic uses of iron, having previously only been used in bridges or factory buildings. In the dome above the banqueting room, you can see how the magnificent chandelier is fastened. Suspended from this central point, the chandelier is 30 feet high and weighs nearly a ton. The Royal Pavilion has a varied and fascinating history, and we hope you enjoy discovering it on your visit today. For 200 years, the pavilion has been bound to the identity of Brighton. Colourful and often controversial, Brighton has grown around the iconic symbol of the pavilion into the city it is today. Designed for entertaining and pleasure, the Royal Pavilion was not expected to last 2 centuries. Our dedicated team of conservators help ensure present and future generations can enjoy this spectacular palace. You can help us to conserve and protect the Royal Pavilion by becoming a member of the Royal Pavilion. For more information, pick up a leaflet or ask in the shop for details.
So cute. Isn't that chandelier amazing? So crazy. But so that just sort of gives you like an intro to the whole Victorian style and how decorated it was, and just a lot of little tchotchkes. People liked their tchotchkes. Okay, let's go back to the. Okay, so this is a really, of that same room, this is a really cool, I think this might be called the Dragon Room, the one with the chandelier, because the way it looks when you're in there apparently is that the dragon is holding the chandelier, which I'm sure is amazing. Okay, so now just a little background on the whole like Victorian and the Industrial Revolution and some of the things I was talking about. There's a huge shift in the way people make their money. Now we're able to mass produce things again so that people can purchase things. People are making more money if they want to purchase more things. They're on a hamster wheel now. So the textile industry was mechanized. The steam engine was invented. So people can also travel easier. So they're seeing more things, they're meeting more people, they see what's available to them. An air balloon crosses the English Channel. The cotton gin is invented so that the garment industry, the textile industry can then really get going. And then steam railroads began in England. The Great Exhibition of London at the Crystal Palace in 1851, and I'll show you that. That happened. Many people traveled to that, saw all kinds of new products and people and things that people were making. Fiber optic technologies introduced in 1864, and that first transatlantic cable is laid. Alexander Graham Bell invents the telephone, so now we can communicate. And then the gas-powered automobile is introduced in 1888. So just, it's a massive amount of new technology. So at this time, this is when the neo-Gothic, the Gothic revival is happening. So while there's this moving forward, there's also a looking back, which is really interesting, particularly as you move through Victorian, and then we push into arts and crafts, and then we move into modernism. Because I think it's really interesting to think about when people want to look forward and do something new, or when they want to look back and go for something old. So anyway, so the neo-Gothic or the Victorian style is like that yellow house that I was showing you. They borrow the motifs of the pointed arches. There's a lot of facets and motifs borrowed from like castle design, turrets, crenellations, materiality, like, rough stone, things like that, parapets. And then you get the wood. Oh, here it is, the pendant and crossbar motif. So that's what we saw before, except we saw it going the other way, which is, I think, really interesting. So right here, and this is a really funny little line drawing, but like you get this pendant and crossbar motif. And then this barge board is basically like it's almost like a wood like fascia. And I know that this is a terrible drawing of it, but I know that you've seen those little fish scale shingles on the sides of buildings. That's what that's called. It's actually really kind of cute looking and different. And then, like I was talking to you, that, you know, flat pieces of wood that are shaped in different ways are called stick work. There's a lot of like stucco, just use of plaster and stucco paneling. This has like a recessed bay window, just like kind of curved in a way. And then you notice these little like sunburst panels that are made of wood. Here, 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 here. I think that's it. And then a lot of like stained glass was used, which kind of makes sense, right? Like kind of harking back to the stained glass in the Gothic cathedrals. And then you'll get like some really interesting, like not just this kind of plain banded friezes, but a lot of time you'll get like wood carvings, different bright colors in there. So we'll look at a few of these, but these are a lot of the motifs of the Victorian style. Okay, so very much a very intense type of decorating, very busy. So a lot of carved ceilings. So it's really interesting. This is a really pretty carved plaster ceiling in this interior. And then here's another one with this, you know, very beautiful, very ornate carved wood fireplace going all the way up to the ceiling with, you know, using pilasters and columns and pediments and friezes, and there's a lot going on there. And then here, you know, just a very ornate house decoration. You notice the castle, borrowing from the castle. This is Balmoral. I think this is supposed to be Queen Elizabeth's favorite place to be. Maybe because she likes Scotland the best. But anyway, this is a really cool castle, completed in 1856. So, you know, well after the Middle Ages, but borrowed completely, you know, from the style of castles. And then this School of Art and Design, you notice like the pointed arches, you know, the really ornate brickwork and the frieze up here. It's really cool. This has this really ornate stickwork, the stone, the interesting use of color, kind of like contrasting color, sort of like a yellow brick and then a red brick. And then, so going from England to the US, so this is London. And so the World's Fair in 1851 took place in London, and it took place in the Crystal Palace, which was I think it was almost 1 million square feet, made of iron and glass. And it was built in 9 months. And it was just to show off, you know, all of the like, you know, technology, the new technology, and of the Industrial Revolution. So everybody could come and see, you know, what was available. This later burnt down, unfortunately, which is kind of odd, right? That iron and glass would burn down, but it did. Then the World's Fair, understanding that technology, enabled all kinds of new designs, new architecture, and new manufacturing techniques. So, which was made possible to build the Eiffel Tower for the World's Fair in 1889, and then also bridges. But look at the interesting motifs in this bridge. So this is, you know, made of steel, right? But we've got quatrefoils, we've got this tracery, you know, it's really interesting. And then these smaller structures, these like little more charming Victorian structures are commonly just called carpenter Gothic. So if you see these kind of houses, and you know, this type of tracery, you know, harkens back to the tracery you've seen with the Gothic cathedrals, but it has like a little bit of a homier sort of, you know, grannier kind of thing, and it's called gingerbread, and it definitely has that sort of, you know, here's looks like a little trefoil, you know, definitely has those motifs, but it's just like, you know, very much diluted, and it kind of is friendlier, a little more accessible. Always made of wood too. And if you've been to San Francisco, you may have seen the painted ladies and all of the Victorian architecture. It's really cool looking. So then these, you know, with it's like the carved plaster on the outside, super intense, very colorful, you know, very decorated, like a turret, the arches. It's really cute. And then here's what, at the time, you know, an interior of like, you know, a probably, you know, pretty high status family would have, but like, you know, lots and lots of furniture. But then also look at all of these, you know, precious belongings that they needed to surround themselves with, like that they could afford, that they could show off. And it's all protected under these glass cloches. And, you know, kind of just sort of, I guess, like armoring themselves with all of their stuff. And I think the world outside was noisy, very stressful. There was a lot going on, and so, you know, it probably felt good to just like put your heavy drapes up, you know, your comfy furniture, and surround yourself with your stuff and feel like you could be in a little kind of cocoon, you know, in your house. So heavy drapes, built-in bookcases, carpets. Carpets are good, you know, to muffle noise. Heavy drapes are also good for all of those things. Heavily upholstered furniture also dampens noise of the, you know, the outside world. So when you start to think about, it's not just wealthy people, you know, that want to buy more stuff and show their status. It's people who are coming into like the lower middle class and the middle class, who they want stuff too. And because of mass production, and because of new techniques, people were able to make things, copies of things, you know, that weren't like, you know, that didn't have the highly artisanal quality, of something that's hand carved, handmade, hand painted, all of that. You know, if it's a machine made, mass produced item that kind of looks like something, you know, that a wealthier person, maybe the person that owns the company that they work for, can have, well, they feel like, you know, that's great too. So it's the same with us. It's like if we find something, you know, that's like a knockoff and it looks good enough and it seems good enough, like it's very, you know, common that people want to buy it. So all furniture was highly decorated, super colorful, and really, you know, like pulled from the you know, Baroque and a little bit Rococo, but a lot of like heavier, very like overly decorated, overstuffed, really, in the Victorian era. Pattern painted, um, lots of times made with wood, but sometimes made with things like paper mache, in order to get them made and get them sold. So those are, you know, obviously much lower prices. And again, large sizes, things were large. So here's some examples of Victorian interiors. Really popular wallpaper, just very heavily decorated, probably in a wealthier household. There would be fabric on the walls, but as you go down in status, you can't afford that. So it's decorated paper, painted, printed, and to look like your wealthier counterparts. And then just a crazy ton of furniture. I just think it's really interesting how they're just all like sort of randomly scattered. Like as if just a whole bunch of people had been in there like hanging out and didn't put the furniture back. But if you notice these armchairs, very like overstuffed, very large, comfortable, the fringe, every surface is decorated. This is an interesting rocking chair by Tonnet. And I know you've seen his other chairs. You literally cannot like walk by like a French style cafe, or probably go to France and walk by a cafe without seeing his bent wood furniture. He basically invented it. He developed the method for mass producing this type of furniture. This is just a fancy rocker that he created. So he would do the caning. He's able to do like hand done caning, and then all of this is machine made, and they are still made today, which is really interesting. Okay, so who was I talking about furniture making? Gabby. Gabby,
Yes.
this is a Henry Belter, and to me this is like the three-headed like
Wow.
evil like the Hydra or something like that. This is like, it's like somebody chewed up a bunch of like Rococo furniture and then spit this out. So Henry Belter is German, and he created this method where he would laminate layers and layers of thin pieces of wood, laminate them all together, and basically fuse them all together. And then he would be able to machine carve them as if it was like, solid wood, but it was just thin pieces. So I guess that once you laminate a bunch of wood, it becomes softer or easier to deal with, something like that. I've never done that before, but obviously it made it so that he could mass produce gorgeous things like this. But you could totally understand why, maybe somebody would think this was, the greatest piece of furniture. It's kind of crazy. The only like motif I can kind of see is what looks to be like kind of a king type of sun king thing there, but I'm not really sure.
That looks like a hybrid between like chairs and a couch, or chairs and a sofa,
Right?
or something like that.
Right. It's like some monster ate a chair and two chairs and a sofa. Yeah, it's bizarre. But like, can't really judge, because people were probably really excited that they could like buy this type of piece, and they probably were, spent a lot of money to them on something that, and they maybe never had something this like decorated, or fancy.
Yeah, and it looks like on the either side with the two chair-like things, they were just trying to create space. And that's what it looks like to me, just like they're trying to create this space of, maybe 3 people sit on it, or,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure when it came out, people were like, what an ingenious idea. You can lay all the way back in those chairs, or sit all the way back. So it's really interesting. Okay, so then in response to the fact that everything was being made by machines, and most things were being made by machines, that the people who were making them were not artists, that the people who were making them were under horrible working conditions, and nobody, seemed to care. A group of men, based on the ideas of the writer John Ruskin, decided, to start the arts and crafts movement. So basically, they wanted to bring back the idea that you do things because you're making something beautiful, and people that buy it are buying something beautiful with a history and an understanding of culture. Just a much more like elitist kind of attitude in terms of what things you should have in your home, and making a judgment on you shouldn't have these other things. And then also they were not able to be afforded by just the mass audience. So they were doing it, but at the same time it could only be afforded by a very few, because of how they were produced. So some great stuff came about for sure, and then definitely those great things influenced some more things that could be mass produced. And definitely not everything that was mass produced was bad. Obviously Tonnet did some great work, but always the trick is, how do you invent something that is meaningful to you and also something that can be mass produced? Like that was a trick that they couldn't quite figure out, always. So the arts and crafts movement was inspired by nature. And important to note is the arts and crafts movement is Victorian. So we're still Victorian. Now, obviously one of the good things is protesting the factory and the terrible working conditions, and things like that. But a lot of people who were working also did not want to lose their jobs. So they were like wanting to hold on to their jobs. So it's kind of a lot of push and pull there. So William Morris is one of the designers, and his wallpapers his prints and his wallpapers are still made today. But he would create these blocks. He would carve the blocks, wood blocks, and then he would print the paper or print the material. And he wasn't popular at first, but then he gained a following. But his stuff is very beautiful, but it's of a certain taste, right? But here's some examples of some things that he did. So here's like a dining room, and he would do, every surface, like the fabrics, the wallpaper, the ceiling, everything. Very like busy in a way. Tight, small patterns. This bedroom, I really do like a lot, actually. I like the combination of that red curtain and then the wallpaper, and then the interesting textile on the bed, and then the carving of the bed. I think that's really pretty. But here's a very romantic painting of him, and I'm trying to think of who that was painted by. It's just a way of seeing him as a cultured, romantic, like back to the basics type of artist. Augustus Pugin was an architect. He just believed that the Gothic style was it. So he did Westminster, and this is Big Ben. So obviously, this is neo-Gothic. So if you've gone there or if you go there, this is not original to the Middle Ages. This is neo-Gothic, which is pretty fascinating, actually, because it's very true to the original style interiors. You look at the arch windows, and all of the motifs are there, and it's very beautiful. He was very religious. Here's some of his furniture. And, if we think back to some of the furniture from the Middle Ages, and you look at this is obviously newer, right? So if you ever see anything, that's just a way for you, if you ever see anything that has like the Gothic motifs, and just really pay attention to the age, because then you can always say, well, that must be a, that must be a Gothic revival or a neo-Gothic, because that's the basically the telltale sign. And just the quality of the carving. And I mean, you see like, this is just, insanely intricate. And then you've got all these great motifs with like we've got the architectonic sort of like, the pediment, and then you got the rose window, and you got these arched windows, and what would have been, stained glass or whatever. But here, you've got this sort of like a cabinet front of glass that evokes that whole stained glass, with the beautiful tracery. It's really cool. And this armoire is amazing, really beautiful. So he designed those too. Here's another dining room. William Morris did this. I like this a lot too. And this is really pushing towards more arts and crafts that I think that we are used to or aware of. This, this frieze. And isn't it interesting how even in wallpaper, you can do that architectonic kind of like, here's the frieze part of the room up here without doing any architecture. And then it sort of like goes to what would be paneling, but it's still the paper. So I think it's really interesting. This piano is amazing. It's all hand painted and all matches. So everything, coordinates, matches. Really, he was really into Japanese lacquering. Basically anything that took a really long time and was super, super expensive. Any kind of handicraft, applied arts. It's not like anybody's just going to walk in and pick up a piano that looks like that. So completely out of reach of most people. Okay, this house is in Pasadena, and if you have not been there, you need to go look at it. Hopefully, if it's not open now for tours, which it probably isn't, it's probably too small, but it will be hopefully soon, right? But this is a great house. It's a really fun tour to go on. This is the Gamble House. It was built in 1908. It took only 2 years to build, which is kind of amazing. But it's very great example of arts and crafts, craftsman architecture, very Japanese influenced. And the brothers, Green and Green, designed it and had it built. So it was 10 craftsmen that built it, only 10. So only 10 people were working on building this, and it took them 2 years, which is pretty amazing. They designed all the lights, all the woodwork, all the balusters, all the furniture, everything. So we'll kind of do a little tour. But definitely has that, you walk into that bungalow feeling. The eaves are really deep, so not a lot of like light comes through, but it's really cool. And the wood, they won't let you touch it, and they tell you repeatedly, please do not touch it, but you just want to touch it so badly because it just has this like amazing looking like rounded softness to it. I don't know how, it's amazing. And so I mean there's wood everywhere. Look at this like interesting ceiling, these kind of like tabs on the ceiling. Look at the stained glass in the light fixture, the pulley system, the amazing stained glass, where they've, had like the tree motifs, like as if it's on the outside. It's really, really beautiful. And then it's like the cedar shingles on the outside of the house. This is the front door with the tree stained glass. It's gorgeous. And then they did all the light fixtures, all the exterior light fixtures. Oh, that's the last one. But yeah, It's beautiful. Anyway, that was short, I feel like. Anyway, do you have any questions? So we just have, we're going to talk about Art Nouveau next class. Oh, I wanted to show you, have you guys heard that the Louvre has all of their collections online? If you didn't know that, I see Julie nodding her head, but it's really cool. Here, I was looking at it. Can you see this cabinet? So this was, this is Charles Boule, which we've looked at his cabinets. This is, he made this 1690, 1710. So Louis the 13th, Louis the 14th, Louis the 14th. But I mean, great photography too, like really, really nice pictures. So if you're interested in like, you know, need like a source for some photographs or whatever, you might want to try the collection at the Louvre. And I actually found some really amazing baskets. I mean, just these Egyptian baskets, like a footed Egyptian basket. It's just amazing to me to be able to see how they made that and how that was preserved for so long. So
what is that made out of? I'm just,
well, they say it's like a grass.
it's weird because it didn't decompose. It just, it looks, and I'm sure they restored it or something. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, if it was in a tomb,
Yeah.
there's no weather, you know, or wind or anything to get to it, or moisture. I mean, that's the thing. It's like the thing about, and it's the reason that we know that the Romans used wicker, because it was preserved in the volcanic ash. You know, it's just amazing. Just the luck of what stuff got preserved and what didn't. Anyway, I could see myself like staring at this until 2 in the morning. There's all kinds of really, this, I don't know why I love this. I think this is so cool. I think that's so beautiful. And this photograph is just amazing. So I love looking at these illustrations. And the hieroglyphics, it's really cool. But they also do this really interesting thing. I love how they did this. I think that is just like with the tail hanging down. And it's almost like, it looks like the top opens and the tail is the locking mechanism. And I think that is just like so cute. and so like functional and cool. And I love that. I love this illustration. She's offering him, you know, food, as she should, right? It's cool. Anyway, check it out. I'm looking forward to looking at it. There's like, I don't even know, like millions of things. There might be millions of things in this collection. All right, well, if you have not signed up for a project, sign up. And if you have any questions, let me know, okay?
Michelle, can I ask a question now?
Yeah.
So my question just is, the photographs are not supposed to be incorporated into the paper. Those are just for the presentation. Is that right?
Oh, if you want to put photographs in the paper, go ahead. I don't mind. Like if you want to like wrap the text and just add them in there and kind of put your, you know, your caption underneath it or something like that, that's fine. You just probably don't want to put like so many.
Right. But then for the presentation, it's just like a slide presentation of a synopsis with more photographs and then bullet points, right?
Yep. Yeah. Because basically, yeah, just like hit the highlights.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, cool. All right, you guys. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.